Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the NRG series 10K team trios. That is right. Standard, modern, legacy, all on the line across all three seats. Let's introduce ourselves one last time. My name is Will Hall, better known on the internet as the Will Hall EXP, and I am joined by none other than Doomwake, Devin O'Donnell. How are you doing, my friend? How have you enjoyed so far today?
Today's been awesome. Like I said, it doesn't get any better than team events, and we have
Doesn't.
been watching some awesome standard content. I know we had a lot of Nadu yesterday. We've been trying to avoid that as much as we can, and I think the standard format is fantastic. And it's been nice to see some legacy too.
Yeah, that's where we've been bouncing between today. Sometimes we have a little look in on the middle tables, but basically every team has brought Nardo in some description. So we're staying fully away from that. And we're going to start this round in the standard seat because we've got some big names and we've got some fun decks to see. So let's get straight down to there. And you can break this down to me, Doom.
Absolutely. So we are going to be watching two absolute titans of the game. So Steven Dykman, our 2023 champion of the NRG Championship Series, on the left-hand side of your screen, playing a mono-white mid-range deck. And on the right-hand side, you might know him as Caleb D MTG on Twitch. Caleb Durward playing Demir mid-range. And this is, we saw Caleb a couple of rounds earlier playing this Demir mid-range deck against Golgari. As far as Steven Dykman is concerned, Steven playing this mono white mid range deck. Now, there's been a lot of chatter about the card Caretaker's Talent, which is one card that maybe we can get up on the screen because we haven't seen it on camera yet before. And it is, I've sort of, you're going to think this is crazy, but I've kind of compared it to the White Fable, the Mirror Breaker. And
Get
that's
out of
the
here.
card we see on turn 3. I mean, it is really, really good. So here's what the Caretaker's Talent does. So the first level, it's a class. The first level is whenever one or more tokens you control enter, draw a card. Triggers once each turn. Now, a couple of things to note about that. It's not just creatures, it triggers off of treasures and maps and all this stuff. And you can do it on your opponent's turn. So you can trigger it once on your turn and once on their turn. And what's really sick about Caretaker's Talent is how quickly it actually can present a lethal swing, right? The third level is creature tokens you control get +2/+2. So if you generate a bunch of tokens, maybe off of Beza or Fountain Port or Mirex, then you can really turn the corner very quickly.
We're going to see when we move. We're doing a good job of keeping this battlefield empty. But yeah, the longer this game, the amount of value this thing can generate, just from like a Mirex, generating a might every turn draws us a card. You can do it in both turns. That's pretty cool to see. And Caleb's like, well, I need to end this game ASAP because I don't know what is going on the other side. Turns it, annihilates the creature land. That's going to crack in for 4 points of damage. Going to mill a couple of cards as well. So we have a little bit more information moving forward here as our 2023 champion untaps as a look at the grip and got lots and lots of options. It looks like we're going to start off with
Archangel Elspeth.
Elspeth. Where are we in the lore
Yeah.
with Elspeth at the minute?
I don't know about the lore. I wish I had a better answer for you. But this is kind of exactly where you want to be. And Steven did rip a land. So Steven can actually go level 2 of the Caretaker's Talent to copy another 1/1. And what's really nice about Elspeth in combination with Caretaker's Talent is Elspeth makes a token every turn, and that will trigger the Caretaker's Talent. So not only is Steven generating more permanents on the battlefield, he's also getting additional cards through all of this. Um, the enchantment that Steven has on the battlefield is Caretaker's Talent. That's the class from the new Bloomborough set. But yeah, Caretaker's Talent in combination with Elspeth. And remember the other thing I mentioned earlier about how quickly you can turn the corner with Talent. If you're making 1/1 tokens every turn with Elspeth, you can imagine if Steven could honestly just flip the Talent next turn and have 2 3/3s.
Yeah. Like, going off it, like Kevin's deck looks like it's really good at going 1-for-1 and just goes, yeah, cool. I don't know what you're
All
doing.
right.
That's really powerful. And we're going to go straight to a game 2. That might be the quickest game we've seen today. And bear in mind, this has got legacies in one of the 3 decks. So I'm going to say we just go straight down to that legacy and see how that game's getting on. Where I think we've got Painter versus Reanimate. And looks like Painter's doing Painter things. There's like some milling going on right now. Grief on the other side here for Nathan. Is that
Will, you're gonna tell me what that is.
That's a fist bump, and that's that game over and done with. I think that's the
Is
combo.
that Painter
I think that was
Servant?
Painter. I think that was Painter Servant, the one of the ones, the special ones from the Chandra World set that we went to, which was Aether Works or something. I can't remember what it was. Back to All right,
Mm.
let's just come back to our faces. Like, come on, like
I
let's
mean,
not
I don't know.
let's just not do it to the people. What we did. This is a Nadu mirror. Both players doing Nadu things. Both players working out: have I won the game this turn? Have I lost the game this turn? We saw a lot of this yesterday, and weirdly, the top tables now in this team event, the players in the modern seat tend to have ban as well. Nadu in less than 24 hours might not be a thing, depending on who you speak to in the world or who's wishing or praying for what. So let me just throw a question out there to you, Twitch chat. Where would you like the NRG series to come to? Like, where is home? Where are you watching from? Where do you want us to bring this awesome event to? And who are you going to bring with you if it's a team event? Like, what seat are you going to be in? We know that Doom's going to be in our stand seat. I'm going to be in the legacy, and we're going to see after this round, we're going to be changing me out, and we're going to get Corbin back in, and he's going to be sat in our modern seat, of course, on a bit of Merfolk.
I don't know if Norm can pull some strings on this, but what if we had an NRG series in the Bahamas? What do you think about that, Norm? Let me know. Let me know. Production, we'll talk about that. But in any case, yeah, this is looks like a chord for 3. Norm said done. All right,
Done.
production.
That's
There
it.
you go.
Hear it first.
NRG Bahamas.
Exclusive. Bahamas NRG. A lot of people in Europe asking for one. We got some fans out there in Europe. You know what I mean? I'm in Europe. There's a lot of you people in Europe watching this right now. Because one thing we don't have an abundance of right now in Magic is live events being covered. You know what I mean? We've really got to keep these events that people do the coverage, the events that do the companies that put the coverage on, and we've got to protect them at all costs. And the way that you can do that just from your own seat right now, watching this event, hitting that follow button. Go follow them on the socials as well. All these numbers, they all add up. This entails that companies to sponsor the companies that are putting on these events. The bigger the sponsorship, the more chance they are to move around the world and get these big events on. So little as hitting that follow button helps so much. I can't even stress how important it can be. The second any other game production is happening, please go back to it. I don't want to talk any more about these two decks that we're seeing on coverage right now.
We can talk some other stuff. We can talk about Pokemon and all this stuff,
Are we We're scooping. Yay, we're scooping. Okay, right. So that means all decks are currently in the middle of sideboarding. So, what side events would you like to see? What's your favorite side event to play, Doom?
At the Magic Cons, they have not the mystery boosters, but chaos Chaos draft.
Okay.
Yeah, where you just you get a bag of packs. You never know what you're going to get. I kind of like that. I've done a couple of those at previous Magic Cons, and those are a lot of fun.
I think like that might have been my answer maybe the start of the year, but throughout this year I've been privileged enough to cover quite a lot of events, and for 1 month I had 2 events that were pauper. I am in love with that format. That format is amazing. I thought it was just going to be like bad draft decks. And let's be honest, they all are kind of bad draft decks, but some of them, the fact that you've got to get value out of these bad draft decks in that format, it's so cool. So I think I would like to see, a little pauper event turn up, maybe 16 of us battling out. Mystery Booster 2. They're coming out. That's where they got all those white border cards. I'm half not looking forward to it because it's giving an influx of people playing white border cards, and I'm not that guy. I'm just not that guy. What are your thoughts on white borders? You liking them?
Some of it's okay. I mean, I own white bordered blood moons. Like that is one card. There's like certain cards I think on the spectrum that if you like it feels a little bit more demoralizing when you cast a white bordered blood moon because like your opponent can't play the game and they have to stare at this white bordered blood moon the entire time. So, it's a little bit of that, but
it's weird that I know what you say. I went through that phase. I was like, right, all my chokes are whiteboarded, all my boils are whiteboarded, all my blood moons are whiteboarded.
Flash fires, all that stuff.
Just a bit insult to injury. But here we go. Deep Cavern Bats. Now that's going to take that's the Get Lost, right? Yeah, that's Get Lost getting tucked underneath it. Now Clem has a full idea of what's in the grip as well.
A lot of Elspeths.
Oh, okay. This is also a deal breaker for me.
What's that? Oh, the mismatch basics.
Come on.
The draft box.
You're our 2023 champion. You're coming back this year to defend your championship. Is this the edge that you get from when you win a championship? You can just go mix max in basics and not tilt yourself out.
I mean, I don't know. Sometimes you just want to, try and find, you want to spend the least amount of time building a deck and just kind of grab the first, how many planes is Steven playing? 19. So to be fair, in Steven's defense, it's maybe a little bit difficult to find 19 matching basic planes.
No,
so I don't know.
I'm not having it. Like, you know what I mean? You came this weekend, you knew you were playing this deck. You could find 19 basics, but maybe the 19 completely different basics, which is a different way of going about it. You know, there's no duplicates going through the whole deck. Here comes a removal spell, which is probably only good in a mono white deck. Lay Down Arms. Exile type creature with mana value equal to the number of planes you control. Its controller gains 3 life. So, you know, nice, cheap, early interaction.
Yeah, and one thing that you brought up earlier is kind of exactly what happened here. Deep Cavern Bat, as powerful of a card as it is, when you put a removal spell under Deep Cavern Bat, you tend to have this situation where the House of Cards falls. And removal spell on Bat, that got back a removal spell, which was able to kill the Gix. And Caleb went from having all of the pressure in the world to just having nothing in play. And now Steven has all of the agency here, can afford to jam one of these Elspeths into a counter spell because he has 2 of them anyways, or maybe just wants to start going towards fountain port tokens. And that's another thing that I really like about these sort of white token style decks is they have a lot of extra things to do with their mana. And that's exactly what we see. Steven has the option of jamming Elspeth, but in the face of that open mana, he's like, I don't need to. I can just start making tokens with fountain port and kill you that way.
I actually like that. And, especially on the other side, Caleb looks like struggling to find land drops here. Having to cash in one of those map tokens, finds it, hits it on the battlefield instantly. So that's good. We've hit our land drop for the turn. We've got 1 extra mana spare, so we might do it. Manipulate the top of our deck. We don't want that. That's the I call it the
sheriff.
I call it the cowboy removal spell. like it's the cowboy removal spell.
It is.
Leaving up 2 mana that could represent obviously a negates, which we do see a couple of in hand for Caleb. And
Caleb's hand is flush with counter magic. There's 2 negates, and I think it might be 2. No, there's at least 1 Phantom Interference. So at least 3 counter spells in hand here for Caleb. So yeah, and now Dykeman's in a position where now that Caleb has deployed a threat, Dykeman maybe can no longer just sit on the back of that fountain port, because not only is he taking damage from the Tidebinder every turn, but also losing life from making a token off fountain port. And we're actually going to hold back the token. And I wonder if that means Steven is setting up block with the token and then before damage sack the token to fountain port, which would also leave you 2 mana to hold up Get Lost.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. I think that's what I was doing. I think we're setting up for a double spell turn as well, because next turn we can also cast the Get Lost and one of these Elspeths. Did anyone in chat get back to me? Where are we in the lore with Elspeth at the minute? I know she died, came back, died again. I guess this is her coming back again as an archangel. Like she did good, and now she's coming back.
Interesting decision there from Steven. So remember that turn sequence had used the fountain port to sacrifice the token that blocked the Tidebinder and did have 2 mana available to get lost to Liliana on Caleb's end step, and actually chose not to. And I wonder if that was maybe a spot where, it's nice to be able to, when you're playing around counter spells, it's nice to be able to get your opponent in a spot where you make them tap mana on their turn, because then if Caleb taps out, Steven has all of the agency to untap and just kind of do whatever he wants. He basically gets a free turn. So now Steven kind of has a reasonable double spell turn where you could get lost to Liliana, maybe try to bait a counter spell and then slam an Elspeth, or maybe Elspeth pass, hold up 2 mana.
Is Elspeth even good here, though? That's what I'm thinking. Like, sure, we bait this out. If anything, I think the Get Lost is the more important card to resolve.
Possibly.
But maybe not. Maybe we could fire it off literally this turn. We can target it at the Tidebinder, which just leaves a Liliana, which inevitably will get ticked up next turn. But Liliana again ticked up every turn means that eventually we're going to have to discard the counter magic. And yeah, I like this. This is how I think I would have gone about it. Get the threat off the battlefield, make you commit, make you tap out a bit more. I'm getting to the ability, some of the turns where I can start double spelling each turn.
I'm wondering though, is the Tidebinder the threat, or is the Liliana the threat? I mean, I guess directly right now, you're at 14. The Tidebinder maybe is a bit more of a short-term threat, but this Liliana might prove difficult to beat in the long run. As you see, Caleb taking the Fortune Loyal Steed off of the bat, leaving Steven with land number 7 and 2 4-drops, Beza and Elspeth. So maybe, Caleb upticks to Liliana this turn. That probably discards a land from Steven, and then I don't know, maybe you just discard the Beza and then just hold the land, and then because land 7 lets you go Elspeth with the fountain port up, and then hold up the ability to sack the token and draw a card too.
We're tapping out here. Have we got a land drop for turn? We do have a land drop for turn, don't we? Because we've got Disdainful Stroke and Negate in hand.
And we're thinking about the schooner on top. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and ship that. Yep. So it's going to play it on tap land. It's going to hold up counter spells. And I guess, I mean, for Steven, it doesn't really matter which 4-drop you cast here. It's going to get countered.
Yeah. And the way that, Kim's been navigating this, like, we haven't actually seen the negate yet, but we've been holding up and playing like we've got it, knowing that we knew about the two Elspeths in hand. So Steven's really had to kind of respect that. And this would be such a good bluff if we didn't have it. But yet we've made him get to the point where he's discard it. Just think how big brain that would be if that was pretty cool.
Yep. So here's the land. Beza is going to get met with a Disdainful Stroke. And yeah, Steven's last card is going to get got by the Liliana, and Caleb has all of the pressure here. The Deep Cavern Bet plus that Restless Reef if he wants to fire it up, or could just hold up more mana for the counterspell. Because I believe there's still 2 more counterspells in hand for Caleb. Looks like Caleb's hand is Duress, Phantom Interference, and Negate. And Steven drew a good one, but that's going to get got by the Liliana.
This Liliana's doing a bit of work. Early on, it didn't look like it was the problem, but it is definitely turning into the problem now as we turn this Deep Cavern back sideways. That's 2 life dealt, 2 life gained. Remember, it does have life link. Taps top of a deck. Finds a basic planes. Another different art planes. Not saying
19 different ones.
So let's talk about this land that we see on the battlefield right now. This
Which one?
The port, the fountain
port,
and all the different modes that it has. Maybe we can get it on the screen because that is all we've got going on over here on Steven Dykeman's side. It's a colorless mana. It comes to play untapped. Tap it for 1 colorless. Pay 2, tap it, sacrifice a token, draw a card. Pay 3 mana, tap it, pay 1 life, create a 1/1 fish creature token. Pay 4, tap it, create a treasure token. So it's got utility. Not right now on an empty board state is it going to do too much, especially with all this value and pressure that Caleb's putting on. All I'm seeing is if this sees a lot of play, I'm buying myself some Magikarp tokens.
Oh, for the fish? Yeah,
the
you
fish.
gotta. Yeah, no, I've been really impressed with Fountain Port in the decks that I played it in. If you go back to the last standard format, there was a lot of people who decided that Mirex was a similar card. Mirex was a card that a lot of the mid-range decks went to against these other, in the games that go long. Mirex is a way to generate a bunch of stuff in the battlefield and kind of is a little bit harder to answer than your typical type of permanent. But the thing that Fountain Port does, it does something similar where it can produce 1/1 tokens, but it's also a lot more flexible. You can make treasure tokens, which can ramp you to either double spell turns or maybe more expensive cards that you have. And it is sort of a card advantage engine. If you have other ways to make tokens, you can use the Fountain Port to draw extra cards. So, I mean, it's essentially just Mirex plus. It's Mirex, but it has a lot more utility than that.
I think we go across to Legacy. I think this game is over, right? We drew 3 land in a row. We've got an answer to this.
I found a removal spell.
But then there's a negate in hand. Like, it's not going to do anything. 4 life. There's lethal on the battlefield.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We could just negate and then untap and attack.
We can also flashing in another threat. So yeah, they're going to go side. Well, that's just a basic land left in hand. We make a token. Can we stifle the token being made? Doesn't even matter.
We're just going to Tidebinder, and then even the token doesn't do it. Yeah. Because now we just play the Tidebinder. Even Dykeman makes the token. Token can block the Tidebinder, but then you still have 4 damage coming across.
All right, let's go across. Let's look at Legacy. It looks like Legacy's over. It looks like so. We're going to go look into Modern. I deserve this. I'm not going to lie to you. I deserve this for calling that game a little bit early. But yeah, it looks like we got Andrew taking it down on Rakdos Painter, beating Demir Scam 2-0. So while that the standard seat kind of shores itself up, we're going to see maybe Casey Ryback can take this down for their team and advance them to a 5-0 record. Which remember, this is 7 rounds today before we cut to the top 8. Look, I'm not about it, chat, but we've got to do it. There's nothing else. It's either this or our faces. Else. And awkwardly, I don't like saying this out loud, but this is better than our faces. Which is
okay,
rough.
Hold on. I'm gonna throw a suggestion out there for production. I know we have those. We had a little bit of special things lined up for you. We're going to show some feature matches or backup matches from yesterday that we couldn't get to. What if instead of watching a Nadu mirror, we cut it to one of those random feature matches from yesterday?
probably only got like a minute or so though, right? While they do so,
Yeah,
we
probably not
could
that
show
much
the
time.
highlight from yesterday though.
The
The
bolt clip.
and that we can I could set it up of what actually happened to that point of that clip. I'm gonna wait till production lets me know if they want to do that or not. But until they do, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, chat, if we're not able to show it, you do need to go back and watch the VOD from yesterday. Okay, so let's see how this stand. We'll go back to stand. I'm being told that we've got a lot of time left on this round. If the standard game, or if this game's over now, if this Nadu deck wins here from KCY back, if they win on this turn, then yeah, we'll go to that game and we'll just watch it in its entirety, because that game was phenomenal to cast and watch. It was one of my favorites to do. It'd be weird casting back on it for the second time by myself, but it'll be good. Here comes the chord. And yep, that's going to be enough for this game to go. That's the handshake, which means we do have a lot of time, which means we do get to go watch that awesome game from yesterday. So the match is over with. We don't need to go back to the stand again. They're offering sweets. So all right, we're going back to our faces while they saw that out, basically. So what we're going to try and show you is the game from yesterday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the booth. Will Hall, Devin O'Donnell. This is actually my last round of casting. I'll be handing off to Corbin after this. He's going to sit with you. You've got how you feeling? It's a long day when it's just you every single round. It's nice to have that contingency so you know what happened in the early rounds to the later rounds, but it can be hard work at times, right? There's a lot of brain power, a lot of focus got to happen.
Yeah, no, I'm having a great time. I wouldn't have it any other way. I love commentating. I love talking about these matches, and I love watching. I love watching Magic. Nothing. It's a great time.
It is a great time. I enjoy it. Obviously, I do it so much. All right, I'm being told we're going to try this again. We're going to try and show that match, but this time with our commentary over the top of it. So we're jumping back in, and now hopefully we switch to the scene. You can all hear us. So what's happened in the earlier turns is we basically had a turn to Blood Moon. First big turn of this match and how it plays out. Turn 2 Blood Moon against these Eldrazi decks, pretty backbreaking, can just win the game on the spot. But
yeah,
stay tuned.
Ted's draw was basically perfect, right? Ragged Man on turn 1, Blood Moon on turn 2, and then Gaddis Souls Raptor on turn 3. It doesn't get any better than that. Now, the thing about Blood Moon in this particular matchup is because Brandon is playing the Through the Breach, Blood Moon is still castable, or excuse me, not Blood Moon. Through the Breach is still a castable card through a Blood Moon. So, not as good against the Breach versions of Eldrazi as it would be against the regular Eldrazi decks. But nonetheless, Ted with a fantastic start here, just kind of putting all the pressure on. And what Blood Moon does do in this matchup is prevents, or it slows down all his dust. And that is something that Ted is certainly, wanting to do.
Yeah, we've got a couple of ways of powering things out. We can get colorless mana from some of the talismans that these decks tend to play. But at the minute, we're just looking at three mountains and one forest. But we've got access to this. This one gets us going to up a land for ourselves.
Yep, Myco Spawn's going to find a second copy of Forest here, and that means 5 mana, so not quite enough to All Is Dust next turn, because presumably that's how Brandon gets out of this, right? Is eventually get to All Is Dust to clean up everything, including the Blood Moon. That'll unlock some mana, and then go from there. But yeah, it's still a little ways away from that.
Yeah, this is a match from yesterday. I'm trying to. Thank you. I was working out how can I
spoilers.
Yeah, all over it.
Yeah, for those of you who are just tuning in, this is not a live match. This was a recorded match from yesterday, and it is we're not going to spoil it, but we'll just say it's a best of NRG series highlight for a reason.
It's a banger. This is a very good match of Magic to watch, to commentate on, to be part of. It is going to go down in history. Turn 2 Blood Moon, remember, into a God of Souls Amp Raptor, and then an Osselus as well to follow up here. So we've got our basic plane, so we can start keep casting some of our spells. Every land now is a mountain. The City's Blessing is probably on at this point, so we get a second token as well. We've got the treasure tokens at the bottom, energy up to 4. Giganta is still in the companion zone. Literally, at the minute, is looking one-sided. How can Brandon even fight back in this situation? Well, let's find out
Yeah.
together.
I mean, 5 mana, 5 mana currently, it kind of all starts with All is Dust, but with 4 mana left over, the One Ring is something that could definitely be something that Brandon is looking for, because the One Ring would buy you that extra turn that you need to get more mana to eventually get to the All is Dust. So Ancient Stirrings is going to be the cast here from Brandon, and really wants to find that One Ring, buy you a turn, get to 7 mana, All is Dust the turn after, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, One Ring is it's a good card. There's a lot of talk about that. Obviously, tomorrow it's going to be interesting to see if that's got any text in the announcement that happens tomorrow. Less than 24 hours from now, I'm sure the Twitterverse will blow up. So we're asking a question. I'm still not entirely sure what the question is in this situation. Looking at
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what
I
happened.
I'm trying to think what it could be.
And this isn't live, so we can't even like go to.
Oh,
This
that's
is
what this
in
is what it was. Yeah,
response.
yeah.
Okay.
In
Yes.
response to it, can I name it? And the card named on that was Kozilek's Return.
Yeah, and this is brutal too because see, Ted shook his head because he had the opportunity to name the One Ring, and maybe rightfully so. Ted was more scared of Kozilek's return, and yeah, the got a little bit punished because Brandon does find the One Ring, and I mean, if you look at the damage on board, if Ted had named the One Ring right there, Brandon would not have been able to cast it, and that would have just been GG.
So ring comes down. Protection happens for the turn because there is more than lethal on that battlefield right now. More importantly, though, 6 land in play. 7 is the real sweet spot for these decks. That's where the big hitting cards can come out. Traditionally, we know them from Tron back in the day. So it's now, what are we going to play around?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Ted, you can't really play around too much. I mean, you did name the Kozilek's return with the Disruptor Flute, but Brandon has more than enough mana to still cast that Kozilek's return. Now, one thing I will mention here is if you are playing around Kozilek's return specifically, you can attack with a creature to put counters on it with the Guide of Souls to get it to 3 toughness, which will get it outside of the the range of Kozilek's return, and that's exactly what Ted is doing.
So the green dice is for the flying counter that is added. The white one is for the +1/+1 counters that are added. We're going to play our land for the turn, add the Giganta to hand. That's the only card left in it. And then looks like we're going to just go to end step. No life was gained, so we don't gain any triggers off the Ossos Pride. And draw for Brandon, which is a Through the Breach. This is the Through the Breach deck. That's the 7th land, and that is All is Dust off the
There you
top.
go.
Boom, boom, boom. This is sacrifice all colored permanents. So the only thing that stays on the battlefield is the One Ring and that flute.
Yeah, now the one thing that Ted is really looking for here is a copy of Arena of Glory. With that Gigantha in hand, we talk about Gigantha all the time, maybe lamenting it a little bit, but Arena of Glory has made Gigantha a lot better in these Boros decks because the ability to give Gigantha haste, normally it's 5 mana 5/5, it's kind of who cares or whatever, but 5 mana 5/5 haste really does amp the pressure up. Imagine here if Ted were to find a copy of Arena, attack for 5, put Brandon down to 3, and then maybe has a little bit of more of a hard time of activating that One Ring.
Yeah, so I had a nice little discussion with a few people about Giganta. I play a lot of Boris. This is my deck currently in Modern. I like playing in tournaments, competitive Magic. I'm not entirely sure Giganta is worth it at the minute because I thought I'm basically telling my opponent what I'm on game 1, which is
Mhm.
is not good. When you're an aggro deck, they can keep sweeper hands, they can keep removal heavy hands, etc., etc. But Arena of Glory is the sole reason that we actually think it's worth it because you can just, it's the 8th sideboard card, as people call it, or the 8th card in your hand. But the ability to be able to put it in your hand one turn and then give it haste the following turn is
Oh yeah.
huge. And here comes
Especially
Flage.
with this card. Yeah, especially
Yeah.
with this card because Flage on enter the battlefield deals 3 damage, and then the attack trigger, you'll get another 3 damage, and then 6 from the Flage. So it represents 12 damage by itself, which is, that's 12 is a lot in a way to close out the game. And for here, Ted's going to go play the Flage and then still has 3 treasures left over to be able to cast that Gigantha if he so chooses. Or yeah, I guess you just go for the Flage instead. So that's going to put Brandon down to 2. And
Yeah.
with Brandon at 2, doesn't really want to use the One Ring, has to find an answer for this Flage, or else Brandon's just going to die next turn.
So what are the answers? We don't have access to deck lists in front of us anymore, but I think it's like another One Ring is probably the only way to stop this. Like a removal spell doesn't do much because it will just come back out of the graveyard. So we need to find a way to stop this attacking us. That's the key part. Because if
Well,
it attacks, the trigger's going to happen.
Funny enough, Brandon's removal spell actually does work here because Kozilek's command exiles. So Kozilek's command could exile the Flage. Same with Devourer of Destiny, also exiles. So actually has a good number of ways to remove that Flage from the game, to kind of get it out of here and make sure it doesn't stay in play. And Brandon, here deep in the tank, wondering if he wants to use the One Ring. And that was a big decision point because at 2 life, if you use the One Ring, you go to 1 and you are priced into, you have to find another One Ring, or you're basically just going to die next turn. So that was a really big decision point there for Brandon.
So yeah, it's interesting because this turn is there's another Flage in the graveyard, which is what you can't see right now. So even if you deal with this Flage on the battlefield, there is another Flage in the graveyard. And I was talking about the line that you just spoke, the Kozilek's command that can exile the Flage in the graveyard and the exile the one in play, because you can use those 2 modes on it, but it does leave you dead to a few top decks. And Brandon going through his head, it's interesting to see the line that and how it plays out. So you can talk me through if you think that's almost a better line of how this game resolves. But he does have a lot of time to think about it. Got a lot of cards in hand. Also, the ring can be tapped to go a card deeper if we want to go that route.
Yeah, I mean, from this position, Brandon kind of needed exactly Kozilek's command, rather, because you mentioned just want to get the Flage out of the graveyard as well. And I can't quite get a good look, but from here, it's you need to answer the Flage in play, answer the Flage in the graveyard, and still kind of like 2 life is not a lot against a deck that has Lightning Bolt and Flage. So you're always in this position of, I need to try to close out the game very quickly before Ted just top decks one of those removal spells. So Brandon has a lot to consider here. And, it's really hard to manage a situation like this. But I think it starts with Kozilek's command.
And Goblin Bombardment as well. Remember, these decks play some numbers of them. You can see 1 in the graveyard already. Going to spread out the graveyard a little bit so we can have a little look at home. Didn't get a great one, but it's fine. So there is a Kozilek's Return command in hand. I believe there is also a Khan in hand. Maybe. I think it was a Khan in hand, but we're going to find out. It is going to be the command.
It's a lot of mana. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
We're going to make tokens with it.
So it looks like this is for 7.
7 plus we get to look at the top 7 and put them back on top in the order that we'd like. We find another copy of the ring there, plus a few through the breaches and a couple of land.
Yeah, it's interesting to see Brandon not choose to exile the Flage in the graveyard from that position. I wonder if maybe he felt like he needed to find a second copy of the One Ring, because what you could do is after you find the ring, you can tap the one in play to draw and then play a copy of a new one, which would give you a little bit of reprieve from the Flage. But that also doesn't mean that if Ted top decks a bolt from here, Ted can just say, okay, pass, on your upkeep after the ring protection wears off, then cast the bolt. So interesting decision here from Brandon to not exile that Flage.
We kept 2 cards on top, and then we tapped the ring to draw the second one. So now we've got both the cards we wax on top of our deck. Access to 8 mana this turn if we want to. We're going to use 3 Scions plus our 1 untapped land to recast another One Ring. That's a good way of stopping the Flage from the graveyard, stopping lightning bolts, etc., etc. Well, at least for a turn, the lightning bolt upkeep wouldn't work, but we do get to pass the turn back. Now Flage, it can attack, but cannot target Brandon, so the lightning helix wouldn't work. Remember, we've got that Giganta in hand, plus whatever we drew for the turn. Ted's having a little think. Giganta is the line we go with. What do you think about Flute? Like, I don't know if this is the game I would decide boarding in for, but I understand why.
So I think flute is pretty interesting from Ted's side of things because it is a way to kind of mitigate the one ring. Sure, the protection trigger still happens, but making the initial protection cost a little bit more and shutting off the ability of the draw ability, I think it's good enough against the one ring specifically that it is worth bringing it from Ted's side because the one ring is one of the cards that makes the is very very good against the Boros deck.
Right, we drew end of turn, so we've gone down to 1 life in our upkeep. Tap this ring, draw another 2 cards. So not only do we need to stop the board from attacking us, we also have to reset our ring somehow, otherwise that will kill us. A
Yeah,
lot of
so
mana to work with.
Ring on 2, Brandon on 1. And now you see we found the Kozilek's command. So Brandon is in an interesting spot where you can command the Flagon play in the Flagon graveyard, but then the ring is still in play. So that doesn't really do it at this point. So I mean, if you're in Brandon's seat, you kind of need to find another copy of the One Ring, right? Because
Mhm.
if you kill the Flage, then you're still just dead on board to the One Ring. So Kozilek's command, I think, was in hand for Brandon. So with those temples, is going to be able to dig quite deep for that One Ring. So 2, 4, 6, 79, 10, 11, looks like 15. So I believe we can command for 13. And, I mean, surely you can find a ring in the top 13 cards, right?
Well, this turn we've drew 1 card. We've also looked at the top 5 cards off that Ancient Stirrings. So that's 6 cards deep already.
Yep.
And if
Plus
you adjust
13.
it, plus 13, that's quick math. That's 19 cards we get to look at. There's only 2 rings left, remember. One's in play, one has already been used and in the graveyard. And we are tapping out. That 13 mana floating in the pool. This command is being cast for 13. Yeah, we're having a little count over here on Ted's side. Plus the 4 tokens, that equals 13.
All right. Command for 13. Take a look at the top 13. And again, Brandon needs to find a copy of the One Ring. So that is priority number 1. Because if you pass the turn with the One Ring in play, you are at 1 life. You are just going to die. So 13 cards. And I guess past the One Ring, what else is Brandon really looking for? It probably has to be some combination of like breach plus large creature, because again, you want to try and get this game over with. You don't want to give Ted too many draw steps.
I do not see any 1 rings in that top
Uh-oh.
13 cards. So that's 19 cards we have now looked at and no 1 ring this turn. Having a little look-see, having a look at
Yeah.
every single card, looking at the options that it could do with it. Even an Emrakul breached right now would not do it because Ted at 32 life.
Yeah, and you see Brandon thumbing through the cards, given the shake of the head. I think we're just going to have to bottom all of these cards, and like I said, has to find a copy of the ring, and we are going
Go
to
in the
do that. Draw
bottom,
step. Will
tap that top card. There's the big smile on the old face. There's Ted's hands in his head. I think we all know what this card could be. Use 4 of my Eldrazi spawn tokens, generate 4 mana, and play that One Ring that we ripped for the turn. Ted cannot believe it. The head is shaking. It's like you're having my eyes out. The 20th card you looked at this turn is the one that you needed. We found it. It's got to be in the deck to find it, and we found it.
Bottom 13, draw 1 fresh card. And yeah, the One Ring is going to make sure that Brandon doesn't die this turn. But I mean, if you look at the board state, still a pretty precarious position, right? The Flage is in play. I believe that you mentioned that Ted still has the second Flage in the graveyard. Plenty of mana to escape. So, and even something like you mentioned an Emrakul, not good enough. Not only is Ted at 32, but there's also, Ted can just sack all of his lands and keep the Flage in play. So, even though Brandon had to go through 19 cards to find the One Ring, still not in the best position.
And then we find another One Ring straight off the top of our deck. When you wait for a bus to come along at the same time. So we can activate this one, go another card deeper. Find an Ulamog. Now, that Ragavan, remember on turn 2, that Ragavan exiled an Emrakul.
It sure did.
Emrakul's DMC is 15. So if we can through the breach that Ulamog, that would be 22-22, Annihilator 15. Is that good?
Now Brandon can just go through the breach Ulamog, make Ted sacrifice all of the permanents in play, and that will actually be good against the Flage in the graveyard, right? Because the Flage in the graveyard needs lands to be able to escape, and those lands are not going to be in play anymore. So if Brandon can navigate, basically Brandon has to go through the breach to Ulamog, attack, make you sack all your permanents, and then deploy a second copy of the One Ring. Brandon, at 1 life, still looking pretty good.
One is not dead.
That is true.
That is a key fact of Magic the Gathering. As long as you have 1 life total or more, you are not dead. I suppose you can get technical and you can say cards in graveyard and stuff, and I'm sure someone in Twitch chat's going to point me out on that. But back to this one. Lots of options. We have to reset that ring or gain life somehow. We also need to deal with the board. We need to deal with the graveyard Flage. Brandon in the tank still. So many options, so much mana. How much mana do we even have, especially if those are Eldrazi spawn tokens?
Oh, I can't count that high.
It's got to be in the 20s. So here's 4 lands to put to one side. That is what I like to call a ring mana. Or
I think we're going breach first. So let's go breach. Breach
like
the
breach.
Ulamog. Yeah, breach Ulamog. That is going to, and it's so crazy that the Ragavan hitting the Emrakul on turn 1 was the like basically the decider of this, right? Where if the Emrakul wasn't hit there wasn't really a lot for the Ulamog. We had to get the D20 out for all the counters.
Annihilate 15. I count about 8 permanents there for Ted. So these are all getting sacrificed, all going to go to the graveyard. And yeah, we're going to get 22 damage dealt. But luckily, we've gained a lot of life because of Flages, etc. So we're up at 33. That's going to drop us down to 11. And the Ulamog does get sacrificed end of turn. So it's not going to stay on the graveyard. So we still need to find a way of getting 11 points of damage dealt over on Brandon's side while resetting that ring, of course.
Yeah, but if you look at Brandon's hand, he also has a copy of Devourer of Destiny. So has more than enough mana to deploy Devourer of Destiny and the One Ring. The Devourer of Destiny, not going to exile anything, but it is still a 6/6. And that's going to be a 2-turn clock here for Ted to make sure that Ted does not get, limit the amount of draw steps that Ted gets.
So here's the Destiny, Devourer of Destiny coming down 6/6. No targets for it. What a shame. And then we're going to sacrifice the rest of us, or a bunch of our spawn, to play another ring, which gives us protection from, well, I don't know what, everything literally, but I don't know what we could draw here over on Ted's side at this point.
We're not tapping that ring. That is not being tapped. This is a spot where I would just turn it upside down to to remind me to never tap it, because I would forget,
I'll just eat it. Just eat it. I'm never using it. Just eat it. Done. Windswept Heath was the draw. Last card in hand, I believe, is a mountain. So we can filter the deck a little bit here. At the minute, it is not lethal on the battlefield. We need another Through the Breach plus big creature to get this game done and over with. And I don't see it in hand here for Brandon. But how could he possibly lose? Ted has only got 1 card in hand that is clearly dead. Only got a land in play. He's going to have to crack this fetch land. Going to go find maybe a Surveil land. Maybe we can... I
think the Surveillance were already gone. Yeah,
so we just have to get the shot.
Gone.
All right. Sure. Down to 4.
Surely Ted doesn't have any outs here, right?
Well, there is an out of a Bone Crusher Giant. There is also an out of a Lightning Bolt. And boom, just like that, the Lightning Bolt, the handshake. Brandon's like, look, fair one. I top deck pretty well. It's only fair. But what an absolutely amazing back and forth game that is, starting with the turn 2 Blood Moon off the turn 1 Ragavan, to then the One Ring hit off the top 20 cards, to then locking them out the game with an Ulamog, getting rid of your opponents, to just lose to that sandbag land into top deck Lightning Bolt. Highlight moment, my favorite play of the whole weekend. It is amazing.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think that the highlight for me, honestly, was turn 1 Ragavan hitting the Emrakul, because that situation would have never happened if that was, basically any other card, because Ted would have had enough permanents to sacrifice to the Ulamog trigger and would have just been able to keep the Flage. And it's just everything about that game is just wild to watch.
It's just so there's so many moments that some players would just scoop in those spots, like, oh, it's blubbing. Yeah, cool, right. Let's go to the next game. Oh, cool. I've got no permanents. Scoop, go to the next game. But also what has been great so far this weekend is me and you, my friend. This is my last round, and it's been a pleasure, as always, to work with you, for you to carry me through every single round. I know your back is sore, so we are going to get rid of me, and we're going to replace me with Corbin. Hostler is going to come take me over from me in round number 6. So we're going to step away, have a slightly longer break than we normally would, because we need to get a new caster in, as well as a new team in that feature match area. And when we come back, you're going to have Corbin, you're going to have Doom. So from me, chat, it's been amazing. Thank you very much. Shout out to NRG. It's been a great weekend. And I'll see you next time. But Doom will see you at the next round. So don't go anywhere. And they'll see you shortly.